Commissioners for the Reuter West Drainage Improvement Petition Project.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 18-48. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-49. In the matter of approving the contracts and accompanying first amendments to the Child Placement Services contract between the Delaware County Department of Job and Family Services, the Delaware County Board of Commissioners, and providers, the Blair Foundation, and Isaiah's Place Incorporated.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bob Anderson with Job and Family Services. The two contracts presented today, the Bear Foundation is actually a new provider that has homes in Central Ohio and Delaware County, and we're hoping to utilize them to keep our children in foster care locally, not only for their benefit, but for the services that we provide. The second contract for Isaiah Place, that's a provider that does residential. We did use them with one child in 2018. We anticipate using them again in 2019. So we're just establishing agreements so if the need comes to rise, we can act and place them immediately.
Okay.
I noticed neither one have dollar maximums or dollar figures or rates per day or anything in them.
Yes, we implemented, we worked with the auditor and the prosecutor, and one of the problems that we were experiencing in the past with appropriations is when we had the not to exceed clause, that we were asking for additional appropriations in order to get the certification on that. So it was agreed that we can do a purchase order, and we will encumber the money as needed, as opposed to tying that up throughout the year. And we're still tied to our budget and our appropriations and that, so we can't overspend the contract because we will have to keep the purchase order as needed.
How did you vet the new placement agency?
I was actually at a meeting with a gentleman that is looking to, him and his wife, to foster and adopt, and he mentioned Bear Foundation. So I took the information back, and our adoption assessor, or one of our supervisors, worked with them and kind of received the information, and they go through the process to make sure that their homes and the provider is something quality that we would see beneficial to our kids.
Okay. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-49. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-50. In the matter of accepting donations made to the Department of Job and Family Services.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
These are donations over $1,000 that were received in December. Do you want who donated in the amounts, or was those provided?
The providers would be great, yeah, and the amounts too.
Okay.
That's fine.
New Hope Church of Powell had donations valued at $5,000. The United Way of Delaware County, value of $10,000. Journey Church of Delaware, $2,080. My Very Own Blanket from Westerville, $1,400, and Liberty Presbyterian Church, $12,000.
I'd just like,
Yeah.
Yeah, go
I'd
ahead.
just like to make a comment. I've always, when we said this before, the generosity of our community, and it's good to see these organizations stepping up and helping out where they can.
I agree.
Yeah, and they've done this in the past for years as well, in very generous amounts.
Yes.
So, again, thanks to all of them.
Yes. Thank you. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-50. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolution number 19-51. In the matter of approving the transfer of appropriation for economic development.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Bob Lamb, Economic Development Director. Commissioners, before you is a request to move funds from one key org to another key org regarding the 23 corridor study and the Entrepreneurial Center, the partnership with Ohio Wesleyan and the City of Delaware. This is not a request for additional funds, just shifting of funds within the approved budget. Thank you.
Putting it where the auditor wanted it, or
Correct. It was at the request of the auditor's office.
Okay. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-51. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Resolution number 19-52. In the matter of approving a participation agreement regarding the energy purchasing programs of the CCAO Service Corporation.
so moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Good morning, John Melvin, Director of Facilities. We've really participated in the CCAO natural gas program since its inception, probably early 2000s even. The current agreement expires at the end of this year. CCAO wants to renew these agreements early so they can get the supplier agreements in place before the term expires. So this would be for another 3-year term with the CCO natural gas program.
What?
Why do we only use the electric or the natural gas?
Yeah. Like I say, we started participation in the natural gas program at its inception. The electric came much later when we could actually start taking advantage of the electric program. We contract with Scioto Energy, who does basically what Palmer Energy does for CCAO.
Right.
We went through, it's 3 years ago, it was probably about 3 years ago, we actually did an RFP process. Palmer Energy submitted in conjunction with the CCAO, a submittal, and Scioto Energy submitted, and the board went with Scioto Energy at that time. It is time to look at that Scioto Energy agreement and
Do the comparisons?
we can evaluate that. I mean,
At the time, we felt Scioto was the better.
yeah, at the time, Scioto Energy on the electrical side actually it does the same thing Palmer Energy does. They take our usage and bids it out to up to 20 generators. On the electrical side, you go to the generator side of things. And really at that time, there wasn't an advantage to aggregate our usage with other counties. With the natural gas program, it's a lot different. Palmer Energy is aggregating our usage. They're actually hedging our, it's not just selecting a supplier and getting it from that supplier. They hedge some of the supply contracts. They'll have, natural gas stored in ground, and it's a little bit more complicated formula on the natural gas side.
When we had most recently did the energy or the electric aggregation, we hit the timing perfect on that. And I know on the sewer district, we saw a reduction in cost of 10 to 15% through that program. So we bid it out at a really good time last time. So.
Yeah. Oh, and just a side note, in October, CCO has their annual meeting for the natural gas program, and they gave us a savings estimate for the season would have been April 17 through March of 18. They estimate our savings about $20,000 off of base price for natural gas.
And I think the agreement says there are 5 utilities, there are 5 services they provide, utilities?
With the CCO Energy program, yes, there's a natural gas program which really started it all.
Natural gas, electricity would be the 2 big ones.
Well, and then there's the electrical, and those are really the customer choice programs. But they also do I'm not 100% familiar with it, when you get to the community aggregation programs where, I think, some of the communities have passed ballot issues to aggregate, or it's not aggregate, but
Yeah.
those programs. And
Right.
they can do that, they can do those programs as well for communities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we haven't participated in any of those type of programs.
Okay.
Right. Okay, vote?
Vote on motion 19-52. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Bitton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Resolution number 19-53, in the matter of approving a supplemental appropriation.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Morning, Commissioners. Karen First, Fiscal Manager. This supplemental is to appropriate monies for the Fancher Road Ditch Improvement Project. It is needed in order to obtain the auditor certification prior to the contract coming before the board for approval.
Okay, vote?
Vote on motion 19-53. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Bitton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolution number 19-54, resolution of necessity for the purchase of a motor vehicle for the use of the Delaware County Sheriff's Office or its employees.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Morning.
Welcome.
Kevin Savage with the Sheriff's Office. This is a vehicle purchase from our grant that you guys administer for us, and be happy to answer any questions you have on it.
Any questions? Vote?
Vote on motion 19-54. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Bitton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Resolution number 19-55, in the matter of approving preliminary legislation for cooperating with the Ohio Department of Transportation to rehabilitate a deficient bridge on Centerbrook Road over Culver Creek.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Good morning, Commissioners. Rob Riley, Chief Deputy Engineer. This is a agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation to administer a federal and state-funded program to provide funding for bridge replacement and rehab projects. This bridge is located at the intersection of Centerburg and Fredericks Road. I'll make a couple notes on this this agreement. Going back several years, the County Engineers Association worked very hard with ODOT, and I'll give credit to these two guys to my left, Mr. Bosman and Mr. Ringel. Dean Ringel is the director of our County Engineers Association. They worked very hard several years ago on a process to exchange state and federal funds going through ODOT. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but what that allows is for the local agencies like ourselves, we are actually able to use the state funds. The federal funds that would have ordinarily gone to us go to ODOT. State funds come with significantly less strings attached, less permitting requirements, all the requirements you have to go through for a federally funded project you don't have to do using state funds. And so we're able to process these projects a lot easier and at a lower cost. So I want to make sure that was noted. And then this project will be eligible for up to $286,000 to cover up to 95% of the cost of this project.
What, along those lines, what is the expected cost and the timeline for this one?
The construction estimate is around $300,000. The work would be done later this year. It is just a rehabilitation project. We'll take the top half of the bridge off, replace the beams and the decking, and preserve the bottom half of the bridge. It'll take about 2 months to do that work.
Okay.
Vote.
Vote on motion 19-55. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-56, in the matter of approving preliminary legislation for federally funded replacement of guardrail on Sunbury Road.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
We have another grant program we were successful in getting funding for. This will provide for up to $110,000 toward replacing deficient guardrail on Sunbury Road, just east of the village of Galena. The total estimated cost is around $120,000. ODOT will cover 100% of the cost up to $110,000, and then we would cover the remaining share. This is relatively simple work. It's replacing guardrails. It doesn't have a lot of permitting requirements like a bridge replacement where you're working in the water wood. So this should go pretty quickly, and schedule on this is to do the work this summer. It should only take a few weeks to get done.
I was just wondering, it located east and south of the village of Galena.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of where, okay, east and south. Sunbury goes, okay.
If you go from the square across the new bridge
Right,
out.
okay,
Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 19-56. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-57, in the matter of awarding a bid and approving a contract between the Delaware County Commissioners and Shelley and Sands Incorporated for the project known as TEL-CR 124-5.99 Home Road and State Route 315 intersection improvements.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
As you know, this is a major project we've been working on for quite some time. We did receive several bids for this contract. The low bid came from Shelley and Sands Incorporated, who we've worked with a number of times. They do very good work. Their bid was $5,406,000, which was about 8% under the engineer's estimate. The schedule for this project will basically the bridge will be the first portion of the project to be done. The bridge needs to be widened and rebuilt to accommodate additional east and west lanes on Home Road. So that bridge will have to be closed starting probably in June of this year for about 5 months. We had a pre-construction meeting last week, and that's the intended project schedule going from either June or July through October, November, depending on when they get started. So in addition to that, there will be work west of the intersection on Home Road to realign that. The road will primarily move to the south into the field, if you're familiar with that area. And then Home Road will have 2 lanes in each direction through that intersection. So again, that work will go from June through probably November. Home Road West and 315 will remain open during bridge construction. There may be a very short time where we have to close the intersection, but for the most part, you'll be able to go at least north and south and west without a problem. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Questions?
No,
Vote.
So the 5 million includes the bridge and intersection, is that correct?
That's everything.
Hey, just an observation, we have well over 100 bridges in our county. Is that-
378.
And that's the disadvantage of having so many waterways coming through our county,
Yes.
but it adds to the cost of all of our projects because of that. So that's the reason additional money is important. So.
Yes.
Yeah, this is an important piece of the improvement of the east-west
Yes.
connector.
Yeah.
Again, it takes forever and costs a lot of money, but this is another very important piece, so it's good to see that it's getting done. Now, I'm personally going to be impacted because I live about a mile from there, so that Home Road Bridge closing is going to be annoying, but
Yes.
no pain, no gain. So,
Yeah, thank you. It'd be
Thanks.
really very necessary,
I know,
east and west. Hard, I'm on the east side, so it's hard to get to the west side. Sometimes. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-57. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-58, in the matter of awarding bids for engineering materials for 2019.
So moved.
second.
Discussion.
As we have done in previous years, we bid out contracts for tree clearing, sidewalk and curb construction, and drainage maintenance. And as we have done in the past, we are recommending award to each of the responsive bidders because we don't know exactly what materials or what services we'll need throughout the year or when we'll need them. Basically, what we will do is once we determine the need for a purchase order, we will go to the lowest bidder first for that particular service, ask for a quote based on the annual prices that they have bid, and then assuming they're able to do the work on the schedule we need, we will issue that purchase order to them. If for any reason they can't, we would then go to the next bidder, but only before going to the lowest bidder first. Again, these are services we use sporadically throughout the year, so we don't know exactly, here in January what we'll be doing in September in terms of sidewalk construction, but these are nice contracts to have on standby.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 19-58. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-59, in the matter of approving right-of-way work permit summary sheet.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
We had 6 pretty standard utility permit applications, and we're recommending approval.
Vote.
Vote on motion 19-59. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-60, in the matter of declaring the necessity for improvements to Berlin Station Road and approving a professional services agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
This is a new project we are wanting to initiate to improve the intersection at Berlin Station and Brawl Miller Road. If you're familiar with that, it is a 4-way stop intersection. The south leg of that intersection has a very steep grade coming up to it with a large culvert just a couple hundred feet south of the intersection. Myself, I've seen on at least 2 occasions school buses coming up that hill this time of year that can't get up the hill because they get to a stop and then slide back down the hill. So I'm sure there's other vehicles that have encountered that similar situation. With the growth in that area, particularly to the west in the city of Delaware and then to the east, we know numerous developments are coming in on Berlin Station Road near the new high school. We are planning on, or expecting to see a significant growth of traffic through this intersection. So what we are proposing to do is first fix the south leg of that intersection, if you will, fix the grade, replace the culvert structure, and then do some minor widening on the east leg of that intersection toward the high school. And then as a second phase, whenever the traffic demands call for it, we would look at upgrading that intersection further with either a roundabout or a traffic signal, but we would only do that once the traffic volumes get to the point where the four-way stop only doesn't work anymore. So our best guess on that is probably 10 years out, but we'll have the plans in place, and as we can, we'll try to negotiate the right-of-way purchase to accommodate that. in advance if it's possible, if property owners are willing to do that. If not, we'll just wait until we're closer to the time when we need to do that work, so.
I think there's houses in all four corners, if I recall.
There are, yes.
Right, right.
What timeline on this one then, Rob?
Excuse me, Corda Engineering was the firm we selected through a qualification-based selection program. We expect the engineering to take about a year and a half, and then phase one, again, the south leg work, replacing the structure, and then doing minor widening on the east leg would probably be done in 2022. So about 3 years out for that, and then again, phase two, we're probably 10 years out from that.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 19-60. Mr. Merrill? Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution number 19-61, in the matter of the Board of Commissioners of Delaware County, Ohio, approving the Delaware, Knox, Marion, Morrow Joint Solid Waste Management District's amended draft solid waste management plan.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Environmental Services Department looked at the update, and everything in the update works in conjunction with our long-range plans for the transfer station. So it is like a 400-page document, so it wasn't a quick read. Anyway, I just want to let you know that we've checked through that to make sure everything works with our long-range plans. So,
Thank you. Any other questions? Vote.
Vote on motion 19-61. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-62, public hearing number 1 for consideration of levying the tax upon motor vehicle registrations authorized under the Ohio Revised Code, section 4504.24.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-62. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-63, in the matter of approving for a specific occurrence a suspension of Rule 3 speaker registration, Rule 4 limitations, and Rule 7 public comment procedure from the rules governing the public comment before the Board of County Commissioners of Delaware County, Ohio.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-63. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Turn it over to Mr. Bowserman.
All right. Welcome, Engineer Bowserman.
Good morning. Chris Bowserman, County Engineer, and I appreciate your board agreeing to conduct this hearing and the subsequent hearing on Monday to discuss the implementation of a $5 increase in the license fee for motor vehicle registrations in the county. Rob's pulling up the presentation, and while we do that, I wanted to start by saying that this topic of transportation funding is much bigger than the specific item that we're here to talk about today, this $5 permissive fee. This is just a small piece of a much bigger puzzle of addressing the transportation funding deficit and potential crisis that's looming in our country when you look at the national, state, and local level where we are. It's something that it's not unique to Delaware County. It's not unique to local governments. It really it goes across the whole gamut of government services and transportation. So, do I have a clicker, Rob, or are you advancing that? I don't think I've got so thank you, I appreciate that.
I do just want to jump in and welcome our former Franklin County engineer, Dean Ringel. Good to see you, Dean. Thank you. Now Executive Director of the Ohio Engineers Association. All right.
I'm really happy to have Dean here today, too. And
Yes,
I think he's going to take the opportunity to address your board during your public comments. So.
Great. Thank you.
So the issue of transportation funding, you'll note that this topic is, again, not just a Delaware County issue. The Columbus Dispatch just 2 weeks ago ran an article. The headlines were "Money for Major Ohio Transportation Road Projects is Gone." And a gas tax is proposed, talked about a coalition that is formed to try to address the transportation funding issue in Ohio. And it's not just a gas tax proposal, it is a transportation funding coalition looking for all kinds of solutions to address transportation funding. So I share that with you again to point out that, again, this issue we're here today about is just a small piece of this larger puzzle. You'll note the coalition that's here includes your County Commissioners Association, my County Engineers Association, and the Ohio Township Association. So when you look at what's going on nationally in terms of transportation infrastructure, I thought this slide was very telling in terms of the investment that our country makes in building and maintaining our transportation infrastructure. Thank you. If you look, this graph shows the investment in infrastructure in our country as a percentage of our GDP, gross domestic product. And so you'll look in the 1950s and 60s when the interstate system was built in our country, and there was a massive influx of government spending in infrastructure. About 7.2, 7.3% of our gross domestic product was spent on transportation infrastructure. Today, that number is 3.3%, 55% less than what it was at that time. And of course, the dollar figures we're talking about in terms of needs are exponentially higher than what they were in the 50s when you talk about building roads in that period of time. So I thought that helped kind of frame the challenge that's before us at all levels of government in dealing with infrastructure funding. There we go. So for funding in Ohio, transportation dollars, infrastructure dollars come from 4 primary sources. There's a federal gas tax that's collected, 18.4 cents per gallon. It's distributed by formula to the states. So all that money goes through each state department of transportation. So none of that's allocated directly to local governments. And generally we have to, our access to that money is through a competitive grant process. Rob talked to you about the federal funding swap in Ohio on a project this morning. Had that swap not taken place, that project would have been funded out of that share of federal gas tax. In a way, it still is because we've simply swapped federal for state dollars. So we collect gas tax in Ohio. So the state of Ohio collects 28 cents per gallon, and that is distributed to ODOT and to local government agencies through a bit of a convoluted formula, but we do get a direct allocation of the state gas tax to us as a county that helps fund the maintenance and operations side of our organization. We collect motor vehicle registration fees, and that's what we're here to talk about today, and I'll talk to you a good bit more about that. And then there are other funds that are available through grants, like through the Ohio Public Works Commission. Some of our local government partners have property tax initiatives, have road levies and road and bridge levies. There are special assessments placed on specific road projects. And of course, in our county, some share of the sales tax, a significant, meaningful amount of the sales tax is dedicated toward transportation and specifically toward capital transportation projects. So in terms of the motor vehicle registration fee structure in Ohio, and then we'll talk specifically about in Delaware County. Across Ohio, no matter what county you're in, there's a basic registration fee that's collected when and we'll talk about the different types of vehicles. I won't go into each vehicle specifically, but let's pull off of that list. The most common would just be a passenger car, non-commercial vehicle. The basic registration fee is $34.50 that you pay annually. Of that $34.50, $11 goes to fund the State Highway Patrol, and $3.50 goes to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles for their administrative fees in collecting and processing the registrations. And and $20 of that $34.50 is set aside for road maintenance and construction activities and gets allocated to different political subdivisions. I'll talk about that allocation in a minute. And then on top of that $20, there is available to various local government agencies in $5 increments what are called permissive license fees, and that's what we're here to talk about today, is one of those permissive fees. So if all $20 of those permissives are in place on top of the $34.50 basic registration, a passenger car could pay up to $54.50 annually for a motor vehicle registration. So of the $20 that's dedicated toward, of the basic fee that's dedicated toward funding, there's a very convoluted formula that I won't bore you too much with, but 81% of that $20 gets split between municipalities and the county. Of that, at 81%, 34% of that, or $6.80, goes to the municipality or the county, depending on where the vehicle is registered. So if you live in a city, that $6.80 goes to the city. If you live outside the municipality, it goes to the county. And then 47% of that goes directly to the county. And then a 14% portion of that distribution, $1.80 of that goes to the counties based on road mileage, and 5% of that goes to the townships based on road mileage. And then there's a 5% portion that's distributed equally to all counties, so it's just that $1 divided by 88, each county gets an equal share of that. So that's how that $20 gets distributed. The Ohio Department of Taxation collects that money and makes that calculation, does that distribution. Now there's an additional $20 I mentioned available in permissives, and this is a really convoluted a plate of spaghetti in terms of how they weave together and overlap, and I'll spare you all the details, but there's an Ohio Revised Code section that pertains to each one of these $5 increments. Municipality, two of them are municipal exclusive, so there's what they call the old and the new, just because of the order, I guess, that they were enacted in. But Delaware, Powell, and Westerville collect the $5 old for registrations inside the city of Delaware, Powell, and Westerville. And then the new fee, another additional $5, is collected by Columbus, the Columbus portion that's in Delaware County, the city of Delaware, Powell, Shawnee Hills, and Westerville. In 1987, the last time the county dealt with establishing motor vehicle registration fees or doing anything related to these fees, the county enacted a section that was a $5 increment that was split, 70% county, 30% township if you're outside the municipality, 50% county, 50% municipality if you're inside the county. And again in '87, at the same time, another $5 increment that is split the same way. And so basically two $5 increments with the same distribution in 1987. And then there is a $5 increment that is in place for townships at their permissive discretion, that 100% of the $5 for registrations in their respective townships come back to that township. And there are 8 townships in Delaware County that have enacted that $5 fee: Berlin, Brown, Genoa, Harlem, Liberty, Orange, Porter, and Trenton. So to try to boil all that down in terms of predicting what your specific fee might be when you go to register your vehicle, if you live in a municipality, and specifically in Delaware, Powell, Westerville, your passenger car currently today, registration would be $54.50. If you're in Columbus or Shawnee Hills, $49.50. The other municipalities in Delaware County, $44.50. And if you're registered outside of a municipality in one of the 8 townships that's implemented their $5, your fee's $49.50. Otherwise, if you're in a township, it's $44.50. So.
Are all of those fees then spent within that entity, like within the township?
If the townships collects that $5, they would spend that money, they would receive that money for their own road projects.
Okay.
The exception might be a joint project that's on a township line.
Oh,
You know, where
okay.
they might have, sometimes entities split the sections of the roadway and say, you take the north half, I'll take the south half, even though it technically might be over the line on that south half of the road might not be in their entity. That would be the only
Okay.
exception to what, your question. So, the permissive license fees on vehicles is set up, there's some wisdom in this, approach to how these taxes are collected and why. Because the registration fees and the gas tax is, by Ohio Constitution, has to be spent on transportation. So it cannot be, your board or I or a board of trustees or the city can't take those motor vehicle registration fees. They can't take the revenues from the gas tax and spend it on parks or on other public services. The Constitution of Ohio says those things are basically user fees, that they have to be, the money collected from those have to be spent for the benefit of the users who are paying for that service. And so motor vehicle registration fees and gas tax provides that because of this constitutional protection. So right now there's some inequity in terms of that structure, mainly brought on by higher mileage vehicles and alternative fuel vehicles, because they are not, though they pay a registration, they pay less, or in the case of alternative fuels, no gas tax or fuel tax for their use of the roadway. So we looked at some different types of vehicles and what it costs or what is paid by a driver of those vehicles annually for the use of the public road system and for the maintenance of that system. So taking a mid-size SUV that gets 23 miles per gallon, drives 12,000 miles a year, $2.30 per gallon gas, which is a little high for right now, but a little low for 6 months ago. So, and for the sake of our example, registered in the city of Delaware, they're paying $54.50 a year for a registration, and based on their mileage, annual usage, they're paying $240 a year in gas tax, and so a total of $294.50 a year, or about $2.45 cents per mile to drive on the public roads and pay for the impact of their use of the road. Kind of put that into perspective and compare it across the other vehicles. We took the IRS reimbursement rate per mile of what they say it costs, what you're allowed to collect for the cost of a vehicle per mile at currently 0.454 cents or dollars per mile, and the portion of that is paid in the user fees for the road is 0.025 dollars per mile. So so you look at that, and we'll compare that then to some other vehicles here in for the basis of comparison. The second vehicle will be a hybrid vehicle. It gets 52 miles per gallon, 12,000 miles. Again, the same parameters, and again paying $54.50 a year. They're paying $106 a year for gasoline and gasoline tax, and $1.34 cents per mile in road user fees. And here they're at 0.013 by comparison. And then for the third vehicle, which would be an all-electric vehicle, pays the registration fee but pays zero gas tax per year at 0.45 cents per mile in use of the road, and 0.005 by comparison. So that tells you that the inequity of the current structure. Each of us that drove here today in a gasoline burning vehicle is subsidizing the use of the public road system for those that are driving with alternative fuels. I think we can all say there's a great benefit in terms of the alternative fuel technology, ecologically and sustainably. That's a direction that we're certainly headed, but we've got to get the equity of the user fee associated with the public roads corrected so that everybody that's using the roads pays their fair share. So part of the reason I'm bringing that up today is an increase in the motor vehicle registration fee helps, in a small way, address this inequity.
It treats all the cars equally.
Yeah, so that's right. So an electric vehicle is going to pay this the same as a gasoline burning vehicle. So the discussion todate's been about where we are with the current rate structure. In 2017, in the transportation budget, the Ohio legislature authorized counties, specifically counties, to enact an additional $5 permissive fee, and 100% of those revenues to the county. So it's again, limited to the Ohio Constitution article that would restrict the use of those funds specifically for transportation, construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and maintenance. So if your board were to enact this, we'd have to certify your action to the Ohio Department of Taxation by July 1st of this year, and collections would not start until January 1st of 2020. So to be clear that we're still basically a year away from this taking place if your board decides to move forward. There are currently about 200, or by 2020, we project there'll be about 220,000 registered vehicles in the county. At $5 additional per vehicle, that'll generate about $1.1 million annually.
So those vehicles in Powell, Westerville, and Delaware that are paying $54.50 would now pay $59.50?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
So this will be $5 added onto the rate structure all across the board in terms of those vehicles and those scenarios that I outlined for you. Again, the last time the county dealt with the motor vehicle registration issue was in 1987, enacted when it became effective in 1988. But think about since 1988, our population has more than tripled. We're 66,000 people at the time that took place, over 200,000 now. Some of the, not just has our population tripled, but traffic has increased even more so because of not just the residential traffic, but all the construction and activity related to supporting all of that development. And the cost of constructing and maintaining roads has more than tripled in that time frame. The size of our infrastructure that we maintain, the system that we maintain, has obviously increased. We maintain 30% more pavement surface area today than we maintained in 1988, just because of road widenings, additional lanes, and in some cases new roadways. In 1988, we didn't have a single traffic signal on the county system, and we now have over 30 signals. We have over 200 street lights that we maintain. And we also have a number of new mandated responsibilities that have been handed to us by state and federal regulation regarding signs, reflectivity on signs, pavement markings, traffic signals, other roadway safety items that are mandated that were not in place in that time frame. So a lot's changed in that time frame. Our fees have not. To give you an idea on the increase in our maintenance cost, we resurfaced South Old State Road in 1988 when it was 22 feet wide and there were 1,500 vehicles per day. We used a chip seal method of resurfacing South Old State Road. Couldn't do that today. the cost of that was $9,000 per mile. Today, in 2019, the cost to overlay the surface on South Old State Road, which is now 60 feet wide, 5 lanes, it has 24,000 vehicles per day on the same segment, and it costs $370,000 per mile to do that. So that's a real-world example of what kind of cost escalation we've seen and the challenges that we face, not just in material costs, but in traffic and traffic demand. And the type of surfaces that we apply in those areas are much different than we could ever think about doing in those past years. And then just to help you understand the magnitude of some of the things that we're doing, the storm that we had last weekend went to a level 3 snow emergency. Some of our drivers said it was some of the toughest conditions they've ever plowed in overnight on Saturday night. But that one weekend, we spent $173,000 on that storm in labor, equipment, and material. So those are real costs. And the tough thing about winter snow maintenance is when you're done, you've got nothing really to show for it. We spend $173,000 on a bridge. It'll be there for 50 or 75 years. You've got an asset that you can hold on to. You spread salt out on the road, and it does its job, and it's gone. And really, you've got nothing to show for it other than the fact you had the roads open, which is a good thing, but it's expensive. And I wanted to make sure you understood the magnitude of the things we're dealing with there. You know, Rob reviewed a project with you today. That's an intersection project that would cost $5.5 million. And that's just the construction cost. That's not the engineering cost and the right-of-way cost to get us to the point where we can start constructing. The South Old State project that we did from Polaris Parkway up to just north of Orange Road, $15 million construction cost just for that segment of road. So there are very real and very expensive. The needs are real and the solutions are expensive. And so I think it's certainly time, and it's certainly justifiable that we consider this increase in our motor vehicle registration fee. So what will we do with this $5? First and foremost, largely due to the actions of your board and previous boards supporting transportation investment, we've made great improvements in the condition of our road pavements and in the condition of our bridge system. And it's really important that we protect that investment. We just can't make those investments and then do nothing and wait until they deteriorate to the point that they need replaced or rehabilitated again. So you'll recall that from the last few years of our budget discussion. You know, our budget is primarily capital projects out of the general fund and of the sales tax, and then our operations side of maintenance and operations of the things we do at the engineer's office to take care of our road system is out of gas tax and motor vehicle registrations. We are at a deficit and have been for about the past 4 or 5 years of the amount of money we spend on operations versus what we take in gas tax and motor vehicle registrations. We're living off a carryover that was built up in anticipation of some larger projects. And so that's a trend that can't continue. And so first and foremost, we've got to right the ship in our own budget with this revenue to get us back into a situation where our revenues support the level of expenditure that we need to make. We also have, as you know, a capital improvement plan for $120 million worth of projects over the next 5 years, and that program is not fully funded. You get out into the 5th year, and we're upside down at that point as well. So this will help support those projects and those activities. And then we're a partner with a number of government agencies on other joint projects, and so this will give us more of an opportunity to partner with other local government entities on projects, primarily, hopefully through our TID, a newly formed TID. We do a lot of things to help support other governments, the townships and the municipalities. We have a program where we match grant applications for the local share of grant applications, try to make all the grants for coming out of Delaware County to be more competitive. That's currently at $50,000. We want to look at increasing that as a result of this additional revenue. And then, of course, there are always projects that we aren't able to fund and consider either our projects or aren't able to consider participation in other projects. This would give us the ability to think a little bigger about those kind of things. So those are the proposed uses. I'll wrap up and let others speak if they choose to. I think the primary takeaway points I'd like to leave you with is that what we're talking about here philosophically is really not a lot different than a user fee for a sewer or for water. This is a user fee for roads. It's the way it's set up, and the money that is collected off of motor vehicle registration can't be spent for any other purpose. It is a user fee for those that use the roads to help pay for that service, and I think the fact that we haven't addressed this for going on over 30 years now, we're fortunate that we haven't had to address it until now, but the fact that the legislature has understood the needs of local government and has given us this latitude, I think we need to be appreciative of that and take this action to shore up our operations as they are today and in the future, how we provide this service going forward. So, if there are any questions, I'd love to try to answer those for you.
Okay, thank you. Very informative. Thank you very much. Do the commissioners have questions first before?
Maybe just a comment. You're not
Sure.
suggesting this will remove the gap, it just reduces the gap.
Oh, this is again, it's a very small piece of the larger puzzle. Yeah, we're going to hear talk about transportation funding at the state level in this coming year. We're going to probably hear talk about it at the federal level, and there's another thing gobbling up all the federal attention right now, but they're not talking much about transportation infrastructure right now. But but it is an issue that's on the minds of people at our nation's capital. Certainly is an issue that's at the forefront of that our new governor understands that he's going to have to address. But even those solutions, our state solutions and federal solutions, they still will not address all of our issues locally. We have to help ourselves here. So, long answer to your question.
But I'm going to ask a question, put you in the spot a little bit, but the $50,000 to the townships, that's been a fixed amount. Is this an opportunity perhaps to look at that number? Maybe that goes from 50 to 60 or something to be better parties, because they face the same issue.
They absolutely do. Frankly, it's unfortunate that this $5, the legislature only authorized this $5 for counties. There's as much need or more at other government agency levels. I won't dance around that issue at all. This is not, our needs are not specific and unique. That $50,000 figure does need to be increased, and this would allow us the ability to do that. We need to look at what that number ought to be. I really can't commit to that, but it's certainly our intention to increase that.
Yeah, I guess a couple points. One is comment, I guess, is our legislators need to address this. And I know I don't know how they can address or what, and this is the kind of the question, what can they do regarding the electric vehicles in particular who are not paying virtually any gas tax fees?
Yeah.
Or is there any initiative underway to study that?
Dean may address that. I don't know that there's a specific proposal on how to do that. There does seem to be a broad awareness of a need to do something about that. One idea that this is purely my thought comes to my mind is that there would be a surcharge on registrations for electric vehicles and not just electric, alternative fuel vehicles, because there's CNG and of course there are hybrids, and so there'd be some structure to say if you're not paying a gasoline, you're not paying a fuel tax, then your registration has a surcharge on it to try to create some equity in that. That's but perhaps Dean can address that when he speaks. If you're okay with that. Yeah.
I had a question regarding the townships. Did you say that under the legislation that's passed, then the townships, though, cannot increase their fees?
This current $5 that was passed in the transportation budget in 2017 was specific for counties.
Okay.
With 100% distribution to the county.
Okay.
So,
how many townships have road levies? I know of some.
I know there are some. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Genoa does, I know. I don't know about.
I can find that out for
Okay.
you for Monday. I'll have that number for you.
Okay, great. And would Dean Ringel like to come next, and then we'll open it to public comment. Thank you, Dean.
Commissioners. Good morning. Dean Ringel, Executive Director for the County Engineers Association of Ohio. Chris did such a great historic job, my presentation will be a lot shorter than his. So, but I want to give you a state perspective. Chris has said many times it's a piece of the puzzle. He's alluded to the needs of the transportation funding in Ohio now that's looking at it from a statewide perspective. And the need for legislation to address that issue. Those are all pieces of the puzzle. It's going to take a lot of different pieces to get the picture. But right now, from the $5 funds, that is something that the state legislature did give permission for the counties to enact. You'd say once every generation they give that ability to you. So this is it. So far, 23 of the counties have already enacted the $5 fund, the additional $5 fees. So that gives you a perspective of where you're at and where that's been happening. And several others are in current discussion for that same purpose. So, other than that, Chris did a great job. I don't want to replicate what he said. I'm open for any questions you'd have, but it is a need. The one thing I would like to also emphasize is when you can enact something like this locally, it stays local. We're looking at doing something to help Ohio. We want it to be able to stay in Ohio to help, and not necessarily always send things to, the federal government. So this is the advantage of being able to enact it for Delaware County as it gets to stay in Delaware County.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Ringel, I have a question for you. Prevailing wage was one topic that was advanced, not this past year, but the year before, and it died. Just didn't have enough support. Had a fair amount of support, and it would enable counties and others to stretch their dollars further. Right. The surrounding states, I think, have all passed making prevailing wage optional, and I'm just curious if that's on the table in the upcoming legislative session. What you're
It's
hearing?
one that would be. It's the same issue that will be brought back forth for discussion. It is one of those interesting things. You can have a good idea, and sometimes you just, for whatever reason, people don't want to be the first ones to always implement things. But all of a sudden, when you find other states are implementing them, and now you're behind the ball, sometimes that brings it more to the forefront. But I think that is one of several topics that we brought up to how can we stretch the dollars, how can we better get the funding needed, and one of it is, less cost.
Commissioner Merrill?
Nothing additional.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank you, thank you. Any public comment? Just come to the mic and give us your name and address, please.
Sure, thank you. Madam President and Commission members, I'm Bill Farino, representing the City of Delaware. I'm the Public Works Director and City Engineer for many years. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Chris, County Engineer, for the excellent presentation regarding transportation needs. I feel as I was watching that, I could just strike out county and put city on virtually every slide in need, and they're identical. We talked about these are difficult transportation funding times, and they're just as difficult within the corporate limits of the City of Delaware as they are within the limits of Delaware County. City Manager Homan is not able to be here, and he will be at the next subsequent meeting to discuss some issues. So I was asked here just to make a brief statement regarding this issue. So the City of Delaware would like to present concerns over additional taxing of City of Delaware residents without county commitment to direct additional funding that could be derived from this back into the City of Delaware for significant road improvement projects within the Delaware corporate limits. Specifically, we've talked in the past about the Point Improvement Project being a regional priority for Delaware County, and as identified in the Columbus Area 2020 Competitive Advantage Project Program. Point is recognized as a major impediment to designated state freight corridor through this area that runs through the heart of Delaware County. We talked about an east-west priority project for the county, maybe just 25 minutes ago being Home Road, and I would put it to this commission that State Route 37, Central Avenue, US 36 at this location is equal or more important to the area for freight travel and for business development within the area. Currently, the Point project is a $26 million project with an estimated $18 million in funding available, but there's a significant gap that we've approached both the county engineer and this commission in the past and had discussions over potentially collaborating on filling that gap in that project. We continue to work cooperatively with the county engineer. We've enjoyed a very positive relationship with the county engineer on multiple transportation initiatives, and we anticipate that relationship continuing. We appreciate that. We're grateful for the $50,000 a year matching contribution, up to $50,000 for our OPWC projects. It did stand out to me, though, that $50,000, and we saw the numbers, is literally a drop in the bucket. With our applications, it represents about 5% of our total project cost. And again, we're grateful for any funding we can get, but it would take 100 years of contributions at that level just to pay for the Home Road project that we heard about earlier today. So our needs are far greater than a $50,000 contribution. The city has supported the original road and bridge tax publicly through hearings, and we supported the permanency of that at 0.375 that we enjoy today for ability to keep our county roads and bridges open. We are respectfully requesting the commissioners know, as they consider supporting the $5 increase for fees, that they evaluate the need to participate in all county roads, including those infrastructure roadways that run through the City of Delaware also that are regionally important to the county for both business, transportation, freight, the quality of our lives. The $5 fee, we know that at the level right now, it's given exclusively for the county's use. We have not heard or understood if at the option of the commissioners or the county engineer, they could direct portions of that towards a regionally significant project, in this case, the Point project we've been speaking about, the gap to that project, and be able to help close that gap so we can make sure that project advances for the betterment of the county. We want to make sure that as all residents of Delaware County, including those within the corporate limits of the city, are treated fairly. And if residents of the City of Delaware are going to pay an increase in vehicle registration, then they should also be able to see some improvement in their transportation system within those same corporate limits. And that power, at least right now, is within the county and the county commissioners and board. Other concern is if the state cap on what we can charge collectively as governing jurisdictions does not change, then this last $5 essentially uses that tool for transportation, but it locks the City of Delaware out of being able to do something similar should at the state level legislation be passed that would allow municipalities to increase their fees by $5, we would not be able to do that locally here. So in a sense, this tool is being given to the county, and we're concerned that we may not see the benefits within the city of Delaware. So as I said, the city manager would like to come and speak at the next hearing, and I just really appreciate the time to be able to express our concerns and, again, our support of county engineer and all the great work that he has done, but we do have the same issues within the city, and we want to make sure we can collaborate on all projects. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Doug Loudenslager, Scioto Township trustee. In my short tenure as a trustee, I need to raise up to the commissioners our appreciation and my personal appreciation for the support that we have had from the county engineer and specifically Doug Riedel. Every time that we've asked or tried to get something done, it wasn't necessarily money, but the support is really appreciated. And we look forward to working with the county engineer in the future.
Thank you.
Just as you heard from the city of Delaware, our townships have challenges as well. Sitting in a township on the western part of the county, observation has been looking at all the activity in the eastern and southern portions of the county with all the development which drives and demands capital improvements, which in turn attracts more development. And for some of the smaller townships, especially on the western portion of the county that has not seen that development yet, we struggle with having enough resource to keep our roads maintained at the level that our residents expect. It goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Whether there's one resident per mile or 100 residents, we still have the same expense, basically, of keeping snow plowed and, salt down and culverts replaced and surfaces maintained. And so in Scioto Township, we're behind schedule. We've got a lot of work to do to try and get our roads up to a satisfactory level. And again, we've appreciated the support and help of the county engineer in doing that. I'm not here advocating that the townships should get a particular percentage of this $5 increase. In fact, it can't be done anyway. I appreciate one of the last bullet points that the county engineer shared was consider increased participation in local projects. I would hope that word could maybe be changed from consideration to expectation. And as this commission board goes forward and looking at all the different funding requests that you have to consider, funding for our townships, for road projects, for basic maintenance, hopefully will command some priority, whether it's with this $5 increase or other funding sources, sales tax, as you go forward. Those of us in the western part of the county can sometimes feel like we're not looked at very much because all the activities are on the east and is on the south. And some of us sort of like that you don't put a lot of attention there. But then on the other hand, we do need help. And so I'm here asking for consideration and as we move forward, whether it's with this $5 increase and any increase in revenues for transportation, I will be supportive. And hopefully some of those dollars, whether it's through matching grants or some other way, we can get pushed to the township level. We need help too.
How do you currently fund your road improvements,
We do not have a road levy. There was a road levy in Scioto Township years ago, and it was not renewed at some point. So the same sources that the engineer identified, gas tax, the license fees, some from the state. So we have some of that same source, certainly not near at the level that the county participates in.
Doug, you said it wasn't renewed. Was it voted down, or was it not submitted?
As I understand, it was not submitted. So, we've talked about whether or not we should be putting that back up on the ballot. But as with anything, you need to balance what can get passed and what's also on the plate for voters. We have a fire levy that's consistently been renewed for good support of our volunteer fire department. So, that's consideration as well. But our township's growing. We're seeing new development. We're facing challenge of getting natural gas and fiber, but we're making progress in that direction through the help of Mike Frommer and Economic Development in the county, Bob Lamb. We've reached out to figure out what else can we do. What can we do to help attract some more of the commercial development that will help diversify our tax base. But, there's 99 homes being planned for the development just east of Meadows of Mill Creek. And so there's that activity, but we'd like to see more diversified development to help spread that tax base and to do those things that our residents really need. So.
What would you spend a year on average on road maintenance?
On road maintenance, Commissioner, that's a great question. I can't pull that number off the top of my head, but we have 2 full-time employees and 2 very aged pieces of equipment that we use for salt and snow. I think our budget this coming year for salt is about $100,000 just for that particular piece. So,
do you have any? What's been your capital improvement spending?
Last year, I believe we spent about $150,000, and there was no match with that. Those are culvert replacements and resurfacing, and we have an application for this current cycle for a matching grant to do Stover Road. So we're hopeful that will be approved.
So you haven't had much occasion to use the matching dollars today?
We did 2 years ago. Our application was not accepted for last year, so we're hopeful that it will be this year. We've been the trustees before me, I think, have been very diligent in making sure that we get those applications filed and that we try and get as much of that as possible.
I believe this is your second year as a trustee.
Yes, sir.
Hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I am, very much so. We're considering the purchase of a fire truck today at noon, so.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your coming in.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Tim Cowens. I'm a resident of Harlem Township. I'm interested and really a student of this issue of infrastructure, and I speak in support of the proposal to increase funding for the county roadways. I've been in Delaware County for 30 years after graduating from Ohio State. What I didn't know really until looking at this issue is during that time I've lived here for 30 years, I've never paid the county an extra $1 or $5 for its roadways. I've certainly used those roadways. I've certainly been a witness to the growth, the considerable growth, even in our little corner of Delaware County, let alone the county roadways that I use every day. I also understand the pressure that increased growth in traffic and in roadway usage has done. For the issue of funding, I can echo the comments that I heard earlier, that the federal government, despite talking about the issue, has been really remiss in helping fund infrastructure. From the state level, it seems like there's always talk about it, but what I know as the reality is local governments and county governments have seen their funding decreased. So I know this is an issue. I've always looked at county government as good government. And the services provided by the county, 911 for example, EMS, are services that I'm reassured are there if I would ever need them. The roadways, however, are something I use every day. I've seen major road improvements in my neighborhood on Smothers Road that has greatly eased the traffic burden in that area, and more importantly to me, has made those roadways safer to travel for me and my family. I know there's a cost to that, and I've benefited from the planning of the engineer's office and the work that's done there. Having seen those projects, I appreciate and expect really those kind of projects to receive the funding they need. I don't want to be one of those citizens that take good roadways for granted. I travel to other places around the state, and I don't take those roadways for granted because I'm on county roads outside of Delaware County that, quite frankly, are troubling. And I would never want to see us in a funding situation that would reduce the level of safety and the quality of our roadways. So I understand the concern of raising any fees, but I also saw it illustrated quite well while this is probably a long overdue adjustment. I'm willing to pay my fair share. I see the importance of it, and I want to support the effort of the engineer as he's proposed this so that the funding levels in this small part, with really perhaps you can say it's the least we can do, but at least we should do that. So I'm in favor of supporting this increase in funding. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What street do you live on, or road, I should?
I'm on Center Village.
Center Village, okay.
Yeah. So
All right.
I'm right at the corner.
Right, okay. I know just where
Tim,
you
what was
are.
your last name? I didn't catch it.
Cowans, C-O-W-A-N-S.
Thank you.
Ah, great. Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Tim Backus. I'm a resident of Genoa Township. And as a motorist and a citizen, I appreciate good roads. I appreciate good bridges. And not only for myself and my motoring, but the goods and service that are delivered to me. And I certainly don't mind paying a user fee to maintain and improve these roads. However, I think that at times, as a taxpayer, I want my money spent wisely, and I don't think it always has been. And I'll give you a couple examples. My own road, which is Tussock Road, was widened and improved about 12 years ago. It went from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. The 3rd lane really hasn't proven to be necessary. And so, we've spent an extra 50% on lane miles there. And not only does that in the capital costs, but last summer we had, there was a resurfacing of it to maintain the road. Obviously, that cost 50% more to do that, and double the cost for striping when that was done. The road certainly needed improvement at that time because the road surface itself had been beaten by trucks. The ditches were the drainage method, and some of them were blocked and so forth. So as part of that road project, curbs, gutters, and storm sewers were put in. This was done by an outside engineering firm, this whole design, and apparently that engineering firm didn't ascribe to the common knowledge that water will not run uphill absent a siphon or pump, because a significant portion of the road was raised above the surrounding land, including in front of my house, so that when we have a year like we had last year and rain like we've had the last several days, my front yard is a lake to some extent. My neighbors across the road have it even worse. They've had flooding since the get-go because drainage was not considered as a part of this project. And even now they complain about it to some extent. Last summer, one of those neighbors made the mention that he thought the Delaware County Engineer's Office was the government equivalent of a locust invasion. And he got a lot of agreement from that, from the neighbors, because of the issues we've had. Another example, more recent, is the traffic light at Worthington-Galena Road and Big Walnut. The traffic light and the lanes were necessary and put in, but that project was extended a third of a mile east, ostensibly to take out a curve and make a curve more safe. All it did was move the curve a little farther east. It's pretty much the same geometry, and it's no more safe or no less safe. But we spent another third of a mile and that kind of thing. As part of my career, I had the opportunity to travel overseas extensively, and I've been through hundreds of roundabouts in the UK and Australia. And roundabouts have been a part of their road design for decades in those two countries and can be a very efficient and safe way to move people if properly designed. But the key is proper design, and we don't have that here. And probably the most egregious example is the one at Bale Kenyon Road and Lewis Center Road. Because of all the zigging and zagging and the curbs there, I have actually seen a couple school buses and a large tractor trailer moving van hit the curbs there because of trying to navigate that convoluted intersection. And I think, we could probably put a couple 4-year-olds in a sandbox and come up with a better design than that. So really, I think, I'd like to see my money used more wisely. I think a lot of the projects are done well, but there are a lot of them that need some better oversight. And until such time as we get that better oversight and can spend the taxpayers' money more wisely, we probably ought to not consider this increase. Thank you.
Thank
Questions?
you, sir. Any other public comment? Yes, certainly.
Brad Lutz, Director of Business Operations and Financial Management. Always have to think of that title, get it backwards. As you know, in my previous life, I was the Pickaway County Administrator. And during my time there, sometime during the summer of last year, I just don't remember the exact date, Pickaway County Commissioners considered this issue and passed it after doing their 2 hearings. I wanted to give you a little bit of perspective there on some of their concerns as commissioners going into it. Certainly the number one concern was the fact that there was a belief, a very strongly held belief, particularly with 2 of our commissioners, that that this wasn't enough, that this was too small a step, that there's so much more that needs to be done on the federal and state level. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone in this room, especially after Chris's excellent presentation, could disagree with that. But the reality was that the state at this time, or at that time, now we obviously have a new governor and a new General Assembly, so we'll see where that goes, but at that time had no interest in addressing the fuel taxes or separate fuel surcharges for other types of vehicles. They put this fee ability into place, allowing counties to utilize these funds to improve their county roads and obviously do other things. And I can tell you that Chris Mullins, who is the county engineer for Pickaway County, also does a very similar program working with townships and municipalities, and agreed that part of this funding would be used towards increasing those matches as well for OPWC works. So there was definitely some consideration of the need of all in the county as part of this. But in the end, if you looked at the numbers, and once again, I can't compare the counties because the growth rate, obviously, in Delaware County is significantly higher. The reality is when it comes on a per capita basis, the amount of gas tax money being collected is actually decreasing per person than increasing. Once again, I don't know if that's the case specifically here. I didn't run the numbers, but and that's a very troubling statistic because, once again, it costs more today, even with the change in inflation, or taking inflation into account, to maintain the roads that we have today. So using your old state road example, even if that road had not been expanded, it still would have cost considerably more than $9,000 a mile inflation-adjusted cost to do that same work today. So ultimately, that's where the Pickaway County Commissioners came down on this, was while they certainly agreed wholeheartedly as a group and have made it a point to talk to the state legislature state legislators in the Pickaway County area and our state congressman about the need to address this at a bigger level. The reality is that if the commissioners did not pass this levy, their concern was the message that would send to the state of, well, we don't really need it. And the reality is we needed it in Pickaway County to maintain the roads that were growing in that county. Once again, Pickaway County does not nearly have the growth of Delaware. I wouldn't even begin to compare those two, but there has been considerable infrastructure growth in the northern part of that county, particularly with industrial growth, and that, of course, means a lot of heavier vehicles, which requires a more sturdy roadway. I'd like to thank Chris Mullins in Pickaway County. He did his best to teach an idiot like me on road maintenance. The accountant, I should say, but I'll say idiot when it comes to roads. And I felt very confident in supporting not only Chris with this, but supporting my commissioners there and helping to pass this and enact it and obviously put it into effect. But I just felt that that perspective might be helpful as you consider this through today and on into Monday and beyond. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Brad. Yes, sir.
Doug Loudon, Slater Scioto Township. Just one clarification from Commissioner Merrill's question. The fire truck that we're considering purchasing today is replacing a unit that's been in service for over 28 years, and those funds would come from the fire levy, so it's not from the general township account that could have been used for road maintenance for the township. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Any other comments? Any comments?
Well, I got a couple of comments.
Sure.
We're going to have another hearing on Monday, so there's going to be an opportunity to expand on some of this. You know, this is a very complicated thing to explain to people. I thought the presentation was outstanding. Whether that was a template you guys followed or whether you designed it, I don't know, but that's a template others should be using as they present it to their counties. I think one thing we need to be clear about is this 1.1 million estimated dollar figure is not a panacea. It's not going to solve the problem. But it is my hope that we will be able to address some of the concerns expressed as partners to help our partners out. And I think that is important to the process because of their limited funding in many cases. Mr. Lutz made the comment, if this doesn't pass, the state may say, well, you must not need the money if you didn't pass it. Or they may say the reverse of that, well, now that you got the $5, you don't need anything else. So it's one of those things, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. The reality is we do need it. The reality is we need to find ways to be creative. And I share the concern, the electric alternative vehicles need to be paying their fair share. And the argument that, well, we need to encourage that industry, well, that's all well and good. But ultimately, they're on the same roads. They've got to be paying their support. I loved your concept about doing it through the registration fees. I have never been a fan of doing it on the mileage. I don't like the big brother idea of somebody's going to be able to tell how many miles I've driven and where I've driven, which unfortunately can be done today in many ways. But the registration fee I thought was a good way to address that. That makes that a non-issue. So my point today is simply we need to be open-minded to the process. This is not the full answer. And perhaps the gentleman who spoke with concerns, maybe that could be addressed in some form Monday after you've had an opportunity to research it, just to help all of us better understand what those concerns are from the other perspective. And with that, I have nothing else to add today.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to echo Commissioner Merrill's thoughts, and I think Engineer Bauserman commented on it as well, and that is, this is not going to fix our funding deficit. We've got, I think, 30 million-ish in reserves right now, but with the planned spending over the next 5 years, those are gone. So $1 million more a year isn't going to replenish that 30 million reserves. So clearly, we need state level, federal level initiatives of the various types we've talked about to address the funding, because we have significant needs in this county for additional capital spending on roads, not just the maintenance of the roads. So Again, this is an important piece, but it isn't going to come anywhere near fixing the funding shortfall that we are all experiencing for various reasons. Anyway, that's all I got.
Okay. You can read the closing.
Resolution number 19-64, in the matter of closing the public hearing number 1 for consideration of levying the tax upon motor vehicle registrations authorized under the Ohio Revised Code Section 4504.24.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion vote?
Vote on motion 19-64. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye. Our hearing is closed, and I thank everyone for coming and voicing their concerns and opinions, and really appreciate it. And it was an excellent presentation. So,
It was very
thank you.
interesting.
And we'll just go into administrator reports right now.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just one item. I had the pleasure of attending the State of the City address last week at the Chamber. And congratulations to the city. There are over 40,000 residents. Just clipped over that. One thing of their presentation was excellent. They set the bar really high for our presentation coming up in March, but we'll be ready. So one thing that they did talk about that will be interesting to see is they're developing a program that will in a different platform than social media type to obtain resident feedback, answer questions, and so forth. I'm interested to see how that engagement with the public goes through their process and be able to answer resident questions. So that's just one thing I wanted to, I definitely will follow up with Tom Homan and see how the early results are, because I think that could be a good way to engage our residents. So.
Right.
That's all I have.
Well, okay. Oh, boy, this is really fun. I get to choose between you two. All right. Commissioner Benton?
Just a couple things. We had our, Commissioner Merrill and I, who are on the Delaware County Land Reutilization Corporation.
I just call it the Land Bank.
The Land Bank, commonly known as the Land Bank. We had our meeting yesterday, and that organization continues to gain momentum and gain structure and so on, and get some funding initiated and get the administrative things set up. So, because one topic we did talk about extensively yesterday was the old jail, and possibly transferring, selling, whatever structure it would take, that project to the Land Bank, who has a lot more tools, a lot more flexibility in properly marketing and transferring that back into positive use. So that, again, I'm encouraged by that. Got my first SEBCO board meeting tomorrow, which is the CCAO Health Consortium. And then we've got a legislative update tomorrow, which will be very interesting, given that we've got new General Assembly, new statewide office holders, and so on. So that's all I got.
Well, regarding the legislative meeting tomorrow, I'm always appreciative that our representatives take the time to come and meet with us once a month. This is something we do once a month at 2 o'clock tomorrow at Source Point, and it's always helpful. It gives us an opportunity to express our concerns and listen to their perspective as well. I had the privilege of swearing in Development Disability new board members last Thursday night, Stephen Finney and Theodore Klecker. They were our appointments. Dana Lehman was the judge's appointment, and to reappoint Louis Barowitz. And that, as I told the group, that's one of our more active boards. They do a really great job, and they do a great job representing our county and spend a great deal of time doing it. So my thanks to them, as well as the current board members, and the honor of swearing them in was a privilege. The only other thing is I was at the board meeting for CCAO on Friday. We had a meeting last year where Knox and Delaware County, and you both are going to be approached about identifying a date, as well as our elected officials and our fellow commissioners in Knox County. So, and we have a fairly short time frame, and Sarah DeNova would appreciate your support on that, as I delegated the putting that together. And that's all I have.
Okay. Just two things. The first, the director of our jail contacted me regarding planting a tree for our employee who recently passed, Scott Amron. And they would like to plant this tree at the jail. They've talked to John Melvin, and we consulted our prosecutor, and we can either go ahead and pass a resolution, or we can just go ahead with your approval and let them do it. I mean, would you like a resolution to plant the tree?
Whatever is simpler.
Whatever's simpler.
Only if that's required.
Okay, just
I
if
think,
it's required. If not, okay, I will relay that to him then, okay? And actually, my next meeting, I met with some of the local officials from Powell, from Worthington, from New Albany, City of Delaware, with Congressman Troy Balderson. And the great news there is that he has been appointed, and there were only 7 open seats on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So he said he was very willing to come meet with us, and he is very big on transportation. So was very pleased. It's a real plus for Delaware County. So I'm sure we'll be in contact with him about setting up a meeting. I specifically mentioned, of course, our county engineer, Chris Bauserman. Yes, that would be very good. And his priorities, he mentioned, were to support workforce and economic development initiatives, assist in navigating federal bureaucracy, and also advocating for federal grant applications. And I asked him who we went through on that, and he said, fortunately, Luke Cromley. And Luke has been with Congressman Teaberry's office for 13 years, and we know him. He's excellent, very, very hard worker. His Representative Balderson's chief of staff is Terry Geiger. Terry Geiger has worked with she was chief of staff for 3 presidents of the Ohio Senate. She also was chief of staff for Congressman Rob Portman, and we are very, very lucky to have her with Troy. They made a big point, too, of reaching out to them because they have so many contacts at the state level and as well now, you know, with the federal level. So it was a really good meeting, and they did give us their contact information as far as other people on staff that we can talk with.
Can I make one other comment?
Sure.
I debated whether to do this or not, but this is a recent story. We don't get political very often, and our role is financially protect the financial health of our county. But I just want to comment on these kids from Covington, Kentucky. They've been beat up unfairly. The only adults I saw in that whole thing were those kids. And the young man who stood there, as he was approached, he didn't back away, he didn't comment. And I think these kids have been treated very unfairly by the media and by the other groups that were represented that day. And again, we're not in a political role in the sense that, but it is a neighboring state. I think these kids have themselves with a great deal of, we should all be very proud. I'd be proud if those were my kids. And so I just wanted to say that for the record.
Sure, thank you. And hearing nothing else, we do have a need for executive session.
Resolution number 19-65, in the matter of adjourning into executive session for consideration of employment compensation of a public employee or public official.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 19-65. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Bitton?
Aye.
We're now recessed into executive session. Thank you, everybody. Central.
Resolution number 19-66 in the matter of adjourning out of executive session.
So moved.
Second, discussion vote.
Vote on motion 19-66. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill is absent. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
We have no business to come before us. We are adjourned. There's Central Committee.